morning. As Rob said, I'm Kyle Hyland. I'm one of the ones that took a little bit longer. So I was actually pre-COVID for most of my work, but happy to be finishing up this semester. My culminating project was on the Cradle to Career data system California's building out. What I did was I looked at other states and what they have done and offer some recommendations to how California can have a successful implementation of their Cradle to Career data system. I'm sorry, let me start the slideshow. There we go. All right, so basically what is a state-line longitudinal data system? It's a system that connects at least 2 of the 4 core entities. This is defined by the Education Commission on the states. And so it connects either early childhood education, K through 12 system, post-secondary education, and the workforce. The idea is that it would eventually connect all of these systems to see how a student matriculates from early childhood education all the way into the workforce. So despite being a national leader in many things education-wise, California is one of the 10 states, according to ECS, that does not have a longitudinal data system. And one of the reasons for that is former Governor Jerry Brown was very resistant to having a data system like this. But when Governor Newsom came into office, he made it one of the platforms of his education. One of the main points of his education platform. So he signed a bill last year, AB 132, that started off a 5-year implementation process to build out the Cradle to Career longitudinal data system here in California. For my lit review, I reviewed some of the existing articles on longitudinal data systems. There was 3 consistent themes that I found as I was doing that. One was the importance of sharing data and eliminating silos amongst participating agencies. As you can tell, that could be difficult considering how large a lot of these education agencies and all these other agencies are. The establishment of the system's shared goals in relation to statewide education priorities. So getting together and making sure that you have shared consistent goals as you're building out that longitudinal data system. And then, of course, ensuring that the student data is stored properly and securely. As we've seen, especially through the last few years, there's been a lot of data breaches in many fields, education being one of them as well. So for my primary analysis, I looked at the longitudinal data systems of Oregon, Minnesota, and Washington. And the main reason I picked those 3 states is they have political structure similar to California. Going into January of 2023, they will all have a Democratic trifecta, which means both houses of their state legislature and the governor's office will be in the hands of Democrats. So I figure any recommendations I make for California based off of my what I've looked at for those 3 states would make sense and would be politically feasible to get through. And then I also kind of looked at the prism of the Data Quality Campaign, which is a nonprofit organization that looks at statewide longitudinal data systems and has established 10 essential elements for implementing one and also 10 state actions. And what I found is that all 3 states have done a pretty good job of building out these robust systems of combining and working together amongst different agencies. But one thing they've been able to they've been able to implement the DQC's 10 essential elements. And actually, most states that have done a statewide longitudinal data system have been successful in implementing these 10 elements. Where the trouble has come in is implementing all 10 of these state actions, and particularly the 3 states, according to DQC's analysis, and the prism I used was State Action 5, and that was provide timely role-based access to data. All 3 states have been unsuccessful in doing that, and I think one of the reasons, obviously, is it takes time to build out a robust longitudinal data system. And then another one that I think is interesting to point out is that Oregon and Minnesota were unable to complete state action number 1, which is link K-12 data systems, those four core systems that I talked about earlier. And I think the reason for that is they have their governance system for Minnesota and Oregon is they are using the agencies that provide the data to that system are the ones that govern it, whereas Washington, on the other hand, decided to create an entirely new state department or state organization to run the system. And I think that's why they've been more successful in actually using this data to see real outcomes in their state. So in terms of policy recommendations, based off of my analysis and looking at those 3 states, I think that California should use the DQC's 10 essential elements and 10 state actions as kind of a North Star or guiding document as they implement the system out. They should establish a new state department to govern and manage the data system, as I said, as Washington has done, as they've seen better success than the other two states. And then they should leverage their existing data systems. For California, the K-12 system, they have CalPads. There's also, the community colleges have their own system. Obviously, they shouldn't be reinventing the wheel, so leverage the systems they already have, find ways to work together in there, and have the shared goals and priorities. And then during the pandemic, California established a partnership with Oregon and Washington on many issues. So I thought, leveraging that partnership that's already there as they build it out could be helpful in building out their data system, considering they already have one out there. So, if there's a way they can leverage that partnership that's already been pre-established, I thought that could be a helpful tool that they could use to implement. So just some of the outstanding questions. There are a few things I wish I could have, dove more deeply into for this project, but I do think an interesting thing for the future thesis or future analysis could be, how do politics and state legislatures influence the implementation and progression of a statewide longitudinal data system? And then do teachers unions have strong observations about the data that's being included, have they or will they push back? And what are the most effective data sets that identify where achievement gaps begin and persist? So to conclude, California is on the precipice of building out this system within the next 5 years. And it's important to have this strong leadership in ensuring a smooth implementation effort. And it is important to consider, I think it's important for California to consider the successes and failures of the other states that have implemented these systems already. Thank you. Yeah.
I know nothing about what you just said. Why should I care?
Why? So I think why it's important is because the goal is to see, to build out a system that can see how students move through early childhood education into the workforce. And I think, it could be helpful to see where achievement gaps begin and persist. And that way, policymakers can use that data to make better policy to help, to assist students as they work through there and actually have actionable bills and things of that nature to build it through there. Because I think it's a big goal, but to see where those issues arise as you follow a student from birth to career, I think it could be huge in ensuring a successful successful education journey as well as a successful workforce journey. Yeah.
Well, I think it sounds great as far as that. I don't think why one. What was former Governor Cradle?
That's a good question. I kind of work in the policy field already, and I don't know if it's necessarily he expressed his reservations. I think with Governor Brown, he was very much like, I have, these priorities, I want to go for them. And this just wasn't on his list, I think, in a lot of ways. But with Governor Newsom, he's got a lot of things on his list, but I think a lot of it centers around implementing this data system.